Good evening and welcome. Let's take a look at the top story we're tracking for you. Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin has arrived in India in a bid to step up bilateral engagement between the two countries. Now, this is Secretary Austin's first visit to the country in a bid to boost Biden administration's push on the region. India is the third stop of Austin's three-nation tour in an effort to bolster a united front against China. In focus are three main issues. The first is the India-China standoff at the WION Valley. The imminent concern of a belligerent China means the need for a strong Indo-Pacific alliance, and India is key to this. Now, Austin's arrival in Delhi coincides with a crucial meeting between top officials of the Biden administration and President Xi Jinping's China in Alaska. Now, the trip also comes at the heels of a historic quad meet between the leaders of India, the United States, Japan and Australia. As the 12th Central Command Chief, Lloyd Austin is no stranger to the threat of terrorism. He has a first-hand experience of the threat posed by terrorist groups in Pakistan to India, and it is supposed to be a part of the Pentagon's chief agenda. Also on the agenda is the Afghanistan peace process. Given India's growing stakes in Afghanistan, New Delhi plays a crucial role in the new framework by the Biden administration, and the issue is likely to figure in the talks. Two countries are also likely to step up defence partnership. India and the United States have robust defence technology cooperation, and the talks could discuss opportunities for joint production of weapon systems and stepping up existing arms sale treaties. Now, we're being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Sudan Sybil, for more on this story. Good evening to you, Sudan. Thanks for being with us on the broadcast. Now, Lloyd Austin has tweeted that earlier he spoke to Australia's foreign minister, even as he was flying to meet with Indian leaders in New Delhi. This is mentioning and strengthening of the Quad. What do we make of this communication and India's role here?
Well, it's a very significant visit, Alison. Even as we speak, the U.S. Defence Secretary is meeting the Indian NSA, Ajit Doval. He is expected to meet the Indian Prime Minister as well. The visit is significant because this is for the first time a high-profile minister or the secretary has come from the Biden administration, and coming just 2 months after the new administration took charge in Washington. The key focus in this visit will be on discussion on the Indo-Pacific vision. The meeting comes in the backdrop of the Quad meeting, which happened a week ago on Friday itself, the virtual meeting. We know that tomorrow will be a key day in terms of his engagement with the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. We know that defence engagement is something that has been engaging. Washington has authorized $20 billion of defence sales to New Delhi. India is part of various pacts with Washington, like the Comcasa and Lemoa, that of course increases interoperability. But largely this is also about coming together of the gems of democracies, India, US, Australia, Japan, as part of the Quad as well. So this visit is a part of a larger Indo-Pacific visit of the US Defence Secretary. He has been to South Korea, he has been to Japan, he spoke with the Australian counterpart as well, and now of course he's having meeting with the Indian leadership. A message of course for Beijing amidst its increased assertiveness and aggressiveness in the region, whether it's with India, the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh, whether it's with Japan when it comes to the Senkaku Islands, whether it's the trade tiff with Australia or the US. In fact, one thing I can tell you is that the visit is coming at a time when there have been conversations in Alaska, very heated conversation, public conversations between the US and the Chinese, and that has shown how the world order has completely changed in the world order which emerged after 1940s, after the World War. And this world order has seen China trying to challenge the rules-based order, and that is why there is concern by countries like India and US, and that is why the collaboration has been increasing. In fact, one of the key aspects of this collaboration is practical collaboration on the ground, and the key outcome of the Quad leadership virtual meeting was the initiative on COVID vaccines. India, of course, will be manufacturing COVID vaccines, which will be, of course, American COVID vaccines with financing from Japan and US and logistical support from Australia.
Siddhant, thank you for bringing us that report there. And of course, Siddhant Sambul will be keeping us up to date with all the outcomes of that ongoing meeting. And he'll be bringing us the latest as it happens. Now, we are being joined by Arun Singh, a former ambassador to the United States. Now, the Defence Secretary Austin happens to be the first top official from the Biden administration to visit India. How much significance should be attached to this, given the geostrategic dynamics, sir?
I think this is a very significant visit. The fact that the US administration took the decision that in the very first trip out of the US, the Defense Secretary does, he also comes to India. Just a few days ago, you would recall that the US President Joe Biden had hosted a virtual summit of the Quad countries, US, India, Japan, and Australia. And while hosting that summit, he had said that this was the first multilateral meeting that he was hosting as president. So it shows the importance he attaches to India, shows the importance he attaches in terms of US priorities for policy in what is described as the Indo-Pacific region. And the reason for that is that every country has to deal with the challenge that they are facing from a China that has risen economically, militarily, technologically, and is now unilaterally trying to assert its preferences and impose that on others in a coercive manner. So that's why after the Quad meeting, the US Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense went to Japan, went to South Korea, where they did 2+2 meeting of the foreign and defense ministers together. And after that meeting, the US Secretary of State went on to Alaska for meeting with the Chinese officials, and the Secretary of Defense has come here because the US wanted to signal to China that they want to approach the relationship with China in a different framework and approach China, as they say, from a position of strength after having revitalized their relations with allies and partners. So I think it's in that framework, aside from the bilateral dimensions, that the US Secretary of Defense is visiting India at this stage.
Ambassador, what should India's main concerns outlined to the US administration be, especially in this post-COVID scenario?
So since the US Secretary of Defense is visiting, I think there will be many important issues to discuss. One, of course, on the bilateral side. We would like to take the defense cooperation forward. We already have a strong defense cooperation partnership. Since 2008, India has contracted to buy almost $20 billion worth of defense supplies from the US. And certainly we would be interested in getting higher levels of technology from the US. But beyond just a buyer-seller relationship, we want to have a technology partnership where we do innovation together. We would also want Indian companies to become a part of the global supply chain of US companies so that there is experience and expertise built up in India and there's job creation happening in India. So that again, I'm sure would be something taken up. But if you look at the region, one of the areas of concern would be Afghanistan. Because there the US has signaled that it wants to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan. It has an existing agreement with the Taliban for withdrawal by 1st of May. But the Taliban have not kept their part of the bargain, where they were supposed to work out a reconciliation with the Afghan government and also stop violence in Afghanistan. So they have continued with that. And there are signals coming from the US that they would like to delay the withdrawal of US troops, perhaps to November or whatever they can work out through another understanding with the Taliban. As far as India is concerned, India would not like a withdrawal of US troops to happen in a manner that leads to instability and violence in Afghanistan. So that would be certainly an important area for discussion between the two countries.
Now, this visit comes close on the heels of the Quad meeting and Austin's visit to South Korea and Japan. What is the message for India here?
I think message for India is twofold. One, that the US attaches importance to the bilateral relationship with India. Our trade is strong. It's almost $150 billion. It has increased by 7 times in the last 20 years. And the trade is broadly in India's favor. We have a surplus. There's growing investment in both directions. US companies have invested more than $40 billion in India. Indian companies have invested more than $20 billion in the US. There's a strong diaspora linkage. More than 4 million Indian Americans live in the United States. And there is a very strong and growing defense cooperation relationship. You would have seen reports in the public domain that when we had difficulties with China along the line of control last year, the US was helpful in terms of information sharing, intelligence sharing, provision of supplies and equipment. So it's an important relationship. And so that's one message, that the US values the bilateral dimension. And the second message is that, as the US leaders have now said repeatedly, for them, the main global challenge is China. The Secretary of State has said that China will be their main geopolitical test of the 21st century. The Secretary of Defense, who is visiting India, he has said that China is the bracing challenge for the United States. So given the challenge they face in this part of the world and what they describe as the Indo-Pacific, the partnership with India will be important for them to enable them to meet this challenge more effectively.
Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us on this broadcast and for your analysis there. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.